All right, we are in progress with Soma Helmi, filmmaker, writer, director, and the short we'll be talking about today is Full Service. Soma, thank you for being here today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Would you like to intro either yourself or the film?
Of course. Yeah, I'll do
Thanks.
both.
Appreciate it. That sounds good.
Hi, my name is Soma Helmi. I am a director writer originally from Indonesia. I was born in Bali and I've been in LA now for a few years, but I started my career there. And I predominantly work in kind of the genre areas. I love sci-fi, but I do love rom-coms as well, which leads me to this short film, which is a short romantic comedy, but it's an all Indonesian cast called Full Service. It's about a woman who hires a an escort to bring to her cousin's engagement party because she's really tired of all the aunties asking when she's going to get married and who she's with and all these kind of questions. So she's hoping inviting this man will kind of at least, reduce some of those questions. Yeah, and we shot all of it in LA with, like I said, an all Indonesian cast, which was not easy. And we had the community come together, and it was a really wonderful experience.
Well, it came off very nice. It's a lovely little romantic comedy. The actors are great, and Indonesia, growing up there and in Bali, wow, how nice! What a beautiful place.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, not bad. So, that said, coming to the first question to play it forward, the inspiration, you're both the writer and the director, so the inspiration in terms of even pre-thought, when you were like, okay, I want to do this real romantic comedy about this pressure situation and this kind of confusion of roles and this little mix up and where did that little seedling come from your life?
Um, to be honest, the idea of it had been I had thought of it a few years ago, not quite in the shape that it is now. So I had a very vague idea of a woman going to a wedding and the misunderstandings and all that kind of thing. But the real heart of it, the Indonesian wedding side of things, came together when I have a group of Indonesian American friends here in LA, and we were all chatting one day and laughing about all the events that we've gone to in Jakarta, and we have these enormous weddings in Jakarta and in Indonesia generally that are, attended by these wonderful aunties who have a lot of questions every time you show up. I think it's kind of a universal thing, but we were all laughing so hard about some of the really awkward questions these aunties ask you. And then that idea got attached to my original idea, and it just kind of bloomed from there. And, from just basically all of us sharing these horror stories, sort of these really pushy but really well-meaning aunties and their questions, and that's where Wes and Sylvie came from.
Well, exploring the universal themes and something that I really connected with, and I think all of us, once we get to a certain age, can feel the pressure of, well, what marriage, kids, career, right? Those are the three big ones. And
Yeah.
those are placed on us either externally by family members, maybe friends, maybe internally by ourselves, whatever we've bought into in the social framework that we've grown up in. And that to me really is the heart of the thematic content. In this kind of instance, it plays out with, relation to, okay, it's time to get married, but it quickly, once this woman kind of picks this guy and gets married to him, there's going to be a part two where they answer back and they're like, hey, where are the kids coming? And the answer
Right.
back and, hey, this guy doesn't have a job. Why doesn't he have a job? Right. So there's all these kind of, pressures that society puts on us, and I think that's where the laughter comes in. Like, you're sitting there with your girlfriends, you're like, I'd love to do this, but if it's not the right time, I can't just like fit myself into this box and be this way and ruin my entire life basically and settle for less. So,
Right.
the message and the meaning of the film on that kind of a level where we can all relate to those pressures, where it's mating or children or career or whatever it might be, or just like being liked, right? That's a like we got to show up in a certain way where we've got to be nice. um how do you feel the film and the characters are dealing with that, and what do they learn? The lead character is kind of, she's kind of like, oh, I want to just like get out of this situation, and I'm going to run by hiring this service and do that. So she's not necessarily facing it,
Not at all.
um, right? Not at all. So anyway, having that as a framework for our discussion, how do you feel the film deals with that, really, that kind of issue on that level?
That's an interesting question. I think from this one, we're kind of I'm taking it from the lens of being Indonesian. So I guess there's some specificity about it where yes, it's universal, but I think like the way the aunties approach them and the way she's kind of terrified of what they will think and what the family will think of her, I think is also some specific things there. With her, she obviously doesn't want to deal with it because she's had to deal with their questions and their prying for years and years, and she kind of breaks and decides that this is the way that she's going to deal with it, is by lying about it and by bringing someone in who she initially thinks is probably going to be this neutral party, but it turns out to be an Indonesian guy, which is kind of perfect for her. So maybe and he kind of says that in the film where he knows how it goes, and he knows how to deal with it a little bit, and he does it really well. And I think everybody in the short has some kind of pressure and some kind of expectations. Even her bougie cousin is kind of dealing with the expectations by marrying he's this in the story, he's this really rich tech billionaire basically. So everybody has a pressure and everybody's dealing with it in a certain way. And I think she is this, like, the character's a little bit manic, a little bit kind of unsure of herself. And I think by the end of it, she decides to take a leap of faith, and she decides in a maybe disastrous way to do something that she's not expected of her, and to do something that's daring. And I think I don't want to say obviously what happens because the twist of it all is that's where it is. But I love the fact that when she does something even more daring and something for herself, it's kind of a little bit of a disaster,
Well,
which is
I didn't see that at all. I thought it was a complete success. I don't know.
yeah, a little bit. Yeah, yeah.
Why a little bit. I mean, it seems like everybody's happy at the end. Uh,
Everyone's everyone's confused at the end.
well, but look, I saw it as a positive resolution, and part of the character development. I think the crux of the comedic part, right, lies in that confusion and that misunderstanding, and how that misunderstanding actually allows her to overcome the limitations that that she's faced, and she's realized, wait, at the end, we see the character at least coming out of her shell, like you said, and allowing for some opportunity that may not have happened otherwise. So
Right.
I think, to me as a viewer, the message of that movie has something to do with saying, okay, well, if I can, prioritize or get to a point where I can free myself by following my own intuition. I mean, in this case, it's more desire, but let's, broaden up the lens by following my own direction, my own inner compass. I can allow for some sort of a closeness that would ordinarily not happen. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
I think closeness or just an experience that maybe
Yeah.
she would not have had before, which is kind of what life is about, really. I think that's the fun of it. I say disastrous because it is a little bit awkward and it's a little bit silly, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. I think she had a fantastic experience because she did take that step, even with all the misunderstandings. And I think her best friend is probably really proud of her, because of it. And I think that's where a little bit of the message is, where it's like, take the leap. Who knows what's going to happen? It's not going to be the end of the world. It might be funny, it might be hilarious, it might be a great story for you to tell one day, but you never know. And I think that's really wonderful for her. But I think also because of that, she'll probably learn that it's okay to do this, and it's not the end of the world if you do something silly.
Well, I think that's an awesome message, and either based on your characters or based on your own personal experience or both, whatever you're comfortable sharing, how have you taken those risks in your life, and how do you encourage yourself and or others to take those risks in their lives to get to those experiences?
I think I've always been like that. I've moved around a lot in my life. Like I said, I grew up in Bali, but I've lived all around the world, and I've never really shied away from that that challenge. Like I've packed up couple of suitcases or a suitcase and moved across the world and started again very often. I've done very silly things for love, where I've journeyed across the continent to just basically be told that they didn't want to be with me after I landed there. I've done
Oops.
very silly
Uh,
things, but they were all experiences, and I think you grow from every mistake or every experience. I think you and bringing it back to filmmaking, all of these experiences and all of these mistakes and all of these disasters actually feed your creativity. And funnily enough, there's always something that, like, if you're trying to find a story kernel, you're trying to find, a solution to a problem on set, somehow all of these disasters and all of these mistakes help you in those moments, and they all, as the older I get, the more I realize that all of those experiences are actually really helpful, and they get you through these incredibly difficult times. Even when you thought they were the end of the world at the time, they actually really help you in life. And I think for me, specifically in filmmaking, I've done a lot of shorts. Like this is, I think, my 22nd short or something. And that's something I always tell younger filmmakers or filmmakers starting out, just go and make it. It might be a little bit of a mess. It might be a complete, disaster. You don't know, but you're not going to know until you do it, and you're not going to learn anything if you just sit back and hope to make a film one day. Take your phone, go out, get some friends over the weekend, and see what happens. And yeah, they might be silly. Yeah, they might be the most terrible thing. You don't have to show anybody, but you'll learn something every single time. And I think that's a little bit where I am the most fearless, is with just trying and just giving it a go. And my skills and hopefully have improved with every single one. I've learned something with every single one. And it's just about trying and giving it a go and seeing what'll happen,
yeah,
you know.
that's a beautiful message, and that's it is because that's how you learn, that's how you improve, that's how you can reflect. And I think all those experiences adding up to um, wisdom, comes from acceptance,
Right.
and that is certainly something that we can all do for ourselves,
Yeah.
and one other thing that emerged for me as you're discussing the film is this, juxtaposition between phoniness and genuineness, and the
Mm.
doors that genuineness opens for you,
Right. Mm.
and the closed doors of phoniness, just keeping it on that superficial level. So
Mm.
there's something there in the film as well. Did you want to reflect on that at all before we move on?
Yeah, that's a really interesting observation, actually, because obviously with Sylvie, it is very surface level, especially with her cousin, and how that interaction with them and the aunties is very surface level, and she kind of doesn't get much out of it. Even when she does bring the perfect guy, the auntie is not satisfied and is now asking when they're going to get married and when that, so what's the next step? And it's kind of, I think, probably not the result that she was hoping for. She was hoping to be left alone because she brought the perfect specimen. And then when she has that really interesting, genuine moment with Wes, and she gets rewarded with probably like the biggest adventure she's had in a long time. There's something really sweet about that. So yeah, that's an interesting observation. I've never really kind of really delved that far into that side of it, but yeah.
That's cool. That's my job. Well, thanks. Thanks for reflecting on that. The last question to play it forward, Soma, is how have you personally changed since making the film?
Oh, wow. That, quite a lot. So this might be a really long answer,
Go
but
for it.
so this film was made uh, through the help of a few organizations and a few really, incredible people in the Asian American AAPI community. Kate, Janet Yang, and Julia Gao came together and created this really wonderful fund um, for women and female identifying filmmakers. And for me, it really pulled me tighter into the community. And in the process of making this film, because I had to get all Indonesian actors, and it brought the community together for me. Like, we became closer in LA, and one of the actors was from New York, and it like made me kind of really get in touch with my identity a lot more through that process, and just through seeing how Indonesians came together for this tiny little film. It's a little short film that we made in LA, but the community, like, we had people coming in from New York, from San Francisco to help us out. The crowd that you see, someone drove down from San Francisco just to be in the background because they knew it was the first Indonesian American film being shot here. And the fact that Kate and Janet Yang and Julia Gao were so generous, it made me feel more accepted, and it made me feel like I could tell these stories about our community in a way that was going to be accepted, in a way that wasn't maybe expected, because it's a romantic comedy and it's funny and it's silly, but we told a story about our community in that way. And just, I think I grew a lot in confidence and as a filmmaker because of this process. And as a side note, because of this short and people watching it, I just shot the biggest project of my life in Jakarta, where I directed and co-created 8 episodes, hour-long show in Indonesia. So it's a pretty huge turning point, I think, personally and professionally, because of this, I think, really lovely ode to our community.
And that's wonderful. It's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. It's funny how the word acceptance comes up again, and that is like an inherent baked in ingredient to art
Mm-hmm.
and the art of filmmaking. And that often comes up whenever anybody is portraying a story about a person, right? This narrative, I mean, all these stories, that's what they come down to. It's that simple story about a person and an experience and how they have been transformed, for better or for worse, by any of these events. And ideally, we humans are sympathetic animals. We're always trying to help one another. How can we be transformed for a better purpose? And the acceptance,
I just,
is,
do
yeah,
you mind if I just
please.
elaborate a little
Yeah,
bit?
yeah.
Because the impact this film has made, not just on me, but when we had our big um, screening of the 4 films from the fund, when mine screened at the end of it, we were, all had a Q&A, and then we were standing there, and I was just kind of bombarded by all these people who identified with the film and the character. But the one really special story was this woman came up to me and she said, I moved here when I was 9 to LA, and she was Indonesian, and she said, she was in tears, I've never seen myself portrayed on screen, hearing my native language and knowing the story that's happening and feeling so seen. And she was thanking me, and she said, she's been here for 20 whatever 30 years, and she said, thank you so much for letting me see myself on screen. And I just thought, that's why we make these movies. And to me, that was a really big, huge moment for me, and obviously for her. And it was just so wonderful and heartwarming that you can do that through this vehicle. Even though it's a small rom-com, it touches people, and it can really like change their lives. And I don't know, it was just like a
For
really
sure.
wonderful for
For
everybody
sure.
when she
It's
did
not the
that.
size, right?
Like,
It's
and
not the size.
wow,
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful. It's beautiful. Soma Helmi, thank you for being here today. Filmmaker, writer, director, nominated by Jamie Saganor. We are out. Play it forward. Thank you so much. Till next time. All right.
Thank you.
You're
Bye.
welcome.